Good morning, members. Please settle down. Seats are in front row or vacant. Requesting members who are sitting and behind can come forward, please. So let's start our today's second topic. And thanking Mr. Dharan Gandhi for his just short notice. Is agreed on purchase his topic on the second session. So before inviting, I request Seema Mehtaji, our past convener, to come forward and give a brief introduction for our learned speaker. And after that, we'll present a momentum for our appreciation. Seema.
Hello, good morning. CA Dharan Gandhi, he is BCom, CA, LLB. On the academic front, he has secured 7th rank on the All India basis of CA final examination and 38th rank on the All India basis in the CA PCC examination. Further, he has unique distinction of scoring 100 out of 100 in accounts at CA PCC exams. So, the learned speaker, Dharan practices as an advocate and regularly before the Honorable Supreme Court and Honorable High Court and other High Court across India, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal and DRP, and specializes in corporate tax, international tax, transfer pricing and GST litigation. He is a regular contributor in professional journals and publications and also a regular speaker on various issues of direct tax. He co-authored many books. He has presented papers at various RRCs and conferences, including RRC organized by Chamber of Tax Consultants, and was a paper written at National Tax Conference 2019, organized by the All India Federation of Tax Practitioners Association. He was the chairman of Commercial and Allied Law Committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. He was a member of Direct Tax Committee of the WRC of ICAI for the year 2019-20. With this brief introduction, I request Mahavir Jainji, Bijal, and Bhavesh Bhai to present a small memento as a token of love and affection of our study circle.
The convener, deputy convener, committee members of the JB Nagar CA Study Circle, seniors in the profession, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to one and all. Hope you had a lovely breakfast. That's the only exciting thing I see, not this session. You had how many sessions for Income Tax Act 25? Only 2 sessions up till now. Did you find anything new? कुछ नया मिला आपको इनकम टैक्स एक्ट 25 में 25, that's it. Old wine in new bottle. So we had I have given talks on various intensive courses on Income Tax Act 25, but let me tell you, there is nothing intensive about Income Tax Act 25. The only change which will happen in your office is that you'll have to keep Income Tax Act 1961 and Income Tax Act 2025 both put together. At least for 10 years still. And of course, you'll have to remember some new sections. That also now, there's no requirement because the taxman and income tax website gives that list, comparison chart, etc. And plus, you also have AI at your disposal. So there's no need to remember new sections as well. Having said that, my topic for today is assessment, reassessment, appeals. I think penalty is already covered is what I'm told, and therefore I'll just skip that for a moment. And prosecution provisions in the Income Tax Act 2025. But before that, what is crucial, I've given a comparative chart in my PPT. Old sections and new sections that you will find various places. But just for the sake of completeness, to put everything together in a proper perspective, it is there in my PPT also. Now, what is important for you to remember is, insofar as the assessment and all other procedural or the scrutiny provisions are concerned, these are applicable from which year? So I have received some queries. After 31st of March 26, the Act is applicable from 1st of April 26. CIT will pass an order on 27th of March 26. I have 60 days time to file income tax appeal before the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Sir, I have to file appeal under the new law or under the old law?
Assessment year is up to 26-27.
And where do you get all this from? 536. So when GST had come in 17, there were some provisions called as transition provisions. Now, when you are getting into a new act, at least for 5 to 6 years, you will have to keep these provisions in mind. What is the baggage of the old act which you have to carry forward, and where do you find all the references? Simple example. Your laws under whichever head can be carried for how many years? Say house property. How many years? 8 years. Business laws. How many years? So laws for assessment year 23-24. You carry it forward under the old act. उसको न्यू एक्ट में सेट ऑफ कैसे मिलेगा? ये आपके माइंड में क्वेश्चन आना चाहिए. Second example. A person transferred a house property, say for example on 31st of March 25, or say for example 31st of March 26. He wants to invest in a new house property. So he will get deduction under section 54. Invest करेगा वो 2 साल के बाद, तब तक नया एक्ट क्लिक हो चुका है. These are all transition provisions. MAT credit. How many years till which date I can get a set off? This is a crucial aspect which you will have to at least keep in mind for 5 years from now. 5 years or more years, whatever. Here, what is crucial is for you to understand repeals and savings provision, which is section 536, and I'd like to spend some time on that. Repeals and savings provision. First, tell me what is repeal. Repeal का अर्थ क्या है? Sunset. There cannot be 2 acts going hand on hand parallelly on any particular issue or topic. Sorry, at any point of time, there cannot be 2 acts going hand on hand, hand in hand, parallelly. कोई भी एक law apply होगा, and if that law applies, it applies by repealing the old act, replacing the old act. Once it is repealed or substituted, consequences are very serious. एग्जाम्पल, स्पेसिफाइड डोमेस्टिक ट्रांजैक्शंस, सुना है शब्द?
Yes.
ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग प्रोविजंस में इंटरनेशनल ट्रांजैक्शंस होता है, वैसे ही बीच में एक स्पेसिफाइड डोमेस्टिक ट्रांजैक्शंस करके एक कंसेप्ट इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ था कि हमको जो इंडिया के अंदर ट्रांजैक्शंस हो रहा है ना, वहां पे भी हमको ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग अप्लाई करना है। उसमें वन ऑफ द कैटेगरी ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस व्हिच वाज डिफाइंड वाज ट्रांजैक्शंस बिटवीन टू रिलेटेड पार्टीज एज डिफाइंड इन सेक्शन 40 कैपिटल ए सबसेक्शन 2। ट्रांजैक्शन बिटवीन रिलेटेड पार्टीज वेयर यू इनकर एक्सपेंसेस, तो रीजनेबल होना चाहिए। वो रीजनेबल कैसे डिफाइन करेंगे? सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला कि यार आप ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग जैसा प्रोविजंस लेके आओ, तो इनकम टैक्स को लगा कि हाँ चलो हमको लाना चाहिए। देन दे गॉट सम प्रोविजंस कॉल्ड एज स्पेसिफाइड डोमेस्टिक ट्रांजैक्शंस। For 2 years or 3 years that was in vogue, and then suddenly they removed specified domestic transaction के definition में transactions as referred to in 40A2. What did they do? They removed it. इसका consequences क्या है? इसका consequences ये है, suppose it was in vogue from assessment year 15-16 to assessment year 18-19, suppose thereafter it was removed, delete किया। और असेसमेंट ईयर 16-17 असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने बोला इसको मैं स्पेसिफाइड डोमेस्टिक ट्रांजैक्शन मान के इसके ऊपर मैं ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग एडजस्टमेंट करूंगा अंडर सेक्शन 92। एनीवे सर्टेन एडजस्टमेंट्स, यू आर इन अपील बिफोर सीआईटी अपील और यू आर इन अपील बिफोर ट्राइब्यूनल। नाउ दैट सेक्शन में से वो रेफरेंस डिलीट हो गया, करेक्ट? उसका अर्थ ये है कि जो भी असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने एडजस्टमेंट किया था वो सारा जीरो होगा, because that section has been repealed, that section has been substituted. To give another example, 276B 276C में प्रोसिक्यूशन लॉन्च होता है for non-payment of TDS or for evasion of tax, etc. Suppose take a case where prosecution provisions do not continue under the new Income Tax Act. After application of Income Tax Act 2025, all prosecutions should be dropped. That is the impact of repeal provisions. Therefore, savings provision. So what does the Income Tax Act section 536 subsection 1 say? Very beautifully, single line, Income Tax Act 1961 is hereby repealed. उसका अस्तित्व खत्म हो गया. Unfortunately, there is a subsection 2. Irrespective of the repeal of the Income Tax Act 1961 and subject to subsection 4, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is called as savings. उन्होंने क्या क्या चीज सेव करके रखा है? Nothing shall affect the operation of repealed Income Tax Act and orders or anything duly done or suffered thereunder. जो भी हमने orders पास किया वो सब सेव कर रहे हैं. Repeal will not affect that. Nothing shall affect any right, privilege, obligation, or liability acquired, accrued, or incurred under the repealed Income Tax Act or orders under such repeal. All your obligations, liabilities, all your privileges, all your rights are preserved. That can't be taken away by virtue of repeal of the income tax. Now, what is crucial for us is section 536 to C, D, E, and V for assessment and other connected procedural aspects. The provisions of the repealed Income Tax Act, now this is important, shall continue to apply. Act gaya, but the provision shall continue to apply to any proceeding pending on the date of commencement of this act. So कोई भी assessment proceeding जो 1st April 26 को pending है उसको जूना act. You must have received 148 notices. You must have received 148A notices in March 2026. Your assessment is pending as on March 2026. That will continue as it is. And to any proceeding initiated on or after 1st April 26. First part क्या बोलता है? Any proceeding pending. अब क्या बोले? Any proceeding to be initiated on or after 1st April 26, including. अभी including शब्द का अर्थ तो आपको पता है. It's inclusive, not necessarily restricted to this. Notices, assessment, reassessment, recomputation, rectification, penalty, reference, revision, and appeals. In respect of any tax year beginning before 1st April 26. And such proceedings shall be carried out as per the procedures specified in the repealed Income Tax Act. Assessment year 26-27, financial year previous year 25-26, all your procedural compliances, all your assessment, scrutiny, this, that, etc. will be governed by the old Act. For how many years they can reopen? 5 years. 3 years and 5 years. 149 में amendment आ चुका है. So assessment year 26-27, end of the assessment year से 5 years, 31st March 32 तक they can reopen. मैं आपको गिनती करवा रहा हूं कि आपको कब तक एक्ट मेंटेन करके रखना है. उसमें अगर कुछ एडिशन हुआ, so you go in appeal. CIT appeal, ITAT. Let me not scare you with High Court pendency and Supreme Court pendency. At least for 10 years from now, for all your prior proceedings up to AY 26-27, you will be required to have Income Tax Act 1960. Correct? एक शब्द ये इंक्लूसिव पार्ट में नहीं है, वो है प्रोसिक्यूशन.
Yes.
At the same time, it's an inclusive thing. But why I am highlighting prosecution is because of 536 subsection 2 clause D and E also. D. Any proceeding for imposition of a penalty in respect of any tax year beginning before the 1st April 26 may be initiated, and any such penalty may be imposed under the repealed Income Tax Act as if this act had not been enacted. Now, even in their drafting of repeals and saving clause, there is no consistency. At some places, they like refer to repealed act. At some places, they write as if this act has not been enacted. C में ये शब्द नहीं है. 536 subsection 2 clause C में shall be carried out as per the procedure specified in the repealed income tax. D में ये wordings है as if this act had not been enacted. Just to point out कि उनका ये कहना था कि हम ये एक्ट लिख के आ रहे टू सिंप्लीफाई. D. Any proceeding pending on the commencement of this act before any income tax authority or any other authority constituted under the repealed Income Tax Act, appellate tribunal or any court by way of any application, appeal, reference or revision or by any other means shall be continued and disposed of as if this act had not been enacted. मैंने D पढ़ा, मैंने C पढ़ा, मैंने E पढ़ा. एक पेनाल्टी के लिए स्पेसिफिक डी है. E is specifically for appeals, applications pending before various authorities, appellate tribunals, courts by way of application, appeal, reference or revision or by any other means. मेरे को प्रोसिक्यूशन शब्द किधर भी नहीं मिली. प्रोसिक्यूशन शब्द नहीं है, उसका कारण ये भी हो सकता है that they may say that no, it's an inclusive definition. There is no requirement for us to write prosecution. But then if you write penalty in C, where is the need for you to again come out with clause D? Out of abundant caution. Could be their reply. So I don't find a reference to prosecution in these provisions. But one can take a view, prosecution should drop. One can take a view that, oh no, prosecution shall continue. And lastly, 536 to B. Where a search has been initiated under 132 or a requisition is made under 132A prior to the commencement of this act. Now please mark this, what is written here is where a search has been initiated, not completed. Where a search has been initiated or requisition is made under 132A prior to commencement of this act, provisions of repealed act shall continue to apply to any proceeding connected in respect of such search or requisition as the case may be, as if this act has not been enacted. Search starting on 25th March 26. Panchanama drawn on 5th of April 26. सर्च कभी खत्म हुआ? नए एक्ट में शुरू कब हुआ? कौन सा प्रोविजन अप्लाई होगा? My gut feeling says practically department would not have carried out this search to avoid any activity. ऐसा आधा सर्च नहीं किया रहेगा, बिकॉज जितना हम लोग कंफ्यूजन है उससे ज्यादा कई ज्यादा कंफ्यूज वो लोग हैं, एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी एक्सप्लॉइट. Some irregularities here and there makes out a case for you. So the first and foremost thing which you should know is that from financial year 26-27 onwards, you apply the new law. So probably the first intimation. Now I will make references to old sections for your and my understanding. आपको उसका करस्पॉन्डिंग न्यू सेक्शन समझना है, क्योंकि ना मैं नया सेक्शन बोल सकता हूं ना आप उसको समझ सकते हो. एट दिस स्टेज वी आर नॉट एट दैट पोजीशन कि हमने नया एक्ट सीख लिया है. सो आई विल गिव अ रेफरेंस टू ओल्ड सेक्शंस, यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द न्यू सेक्शन. So your first return of income will be filed for tax year 26-27, which will be filed, say for example, by 31st. First return, say for example, will be filed by 1st April 2027. Presuming कि वो लोग ने फॉर्म्स वगैरह यूटिलिटी सब वगैरह दे दिया, which is very difficult, but मान लो दे दिया. It is only after 1st April 27 that the procedural section will kick in, that is by way of issuing an intimation under 143(1). वहां से स्टार्ट होगा, उसके पहले प्रोसीजरल एस्पेक्ट्स किक नहीं होगा. At this stage probably what has kicked is TDS and advanced tax provisions. And of course, lower tax deduction certificate and all those certificates have kicked in. Apart from that, your advanced tax, for which purpose you'll have to go through the computation of income ka wo subsections, etc. Correct? Now, very frankly, there is nothing substantially different from the old act and the new act. All sections are almost the same. Just that A explanation goes, that is by way of now a subsection. B proviso goes, that is again now by way of a subsection. And some of the wordings are here and there. So instead of non-obstante clause, that is notwithstanding anything contained, they have used the word irrespective of anything. And then they say कि हमने changes लाया है. So those are the only changes which they have made. Instead of 6 months from the end of the month, they say 180 days from the end. So वही सब चीज चेंज किया है, बाकी substantially there is no change at all. Just that you will have to remember new sections, etc. But there will be some minor difference here and there. And how do you understand that is by comparing old with. That is how you understand कि क्या differences आया है, and which will have a material bearing. That is the only way to read the new act. भाई उन्होंने जूना एक्ट से क्या चेंजेस किया है कंपेयर विद द ओल्ड एक्ट एंड यू विल फाइंड सर्टन थिंग. एक्टिव वॉइस, पैसिव वॉइस, यही सब किया उन्होंने. सर मैंने पूरा लाइन बाय लाइन पढ़ा है सब सेक्शंस. Word by word it is matching. Just that some part will appear in the later part, some part will appear in the first part as active voice, passive voice kiya hua. And some places tables have been inserted, etc. etc. Doesn't make the act simpler. And does not mean that a layman will be able to understand. उनको अभी भी आपके पास आना ही पड़ेगा. Probably your work would increase. For two reasons. A, the officers would be confused. B, laymen would be confused. And therefore, you will have to sort it out. There is a high possibility officers would apply old law to new law to old provisions, etc. etc. That is where you will get opportunities. This is going to happen. This has happened in GST as well. GST के transition provisions में बहुत issues आए हैं. So first 5 years issues which you will face is transition issue. Now, what I have done is I have done section by section comparison, and wherever I find a difference, I have written in my PPT. Section 142 is a section for conducting prior inquiry, prior to assessment. Inquiry before assessment. The corresponding section under the new act is section 268. First change is time for conducting special audit. Under 142(2)(a), considering 4 factors: complexity, nature of business, transactions, etc. If AO is of the opinion that your accounts require a special audit, then he will order a special audit with the prior permission of principal commissioner. Time limit to complete the special audit was 180 days from the date on which directions are received by the SSC. So if the order is passed, say 25th of March 25, SSC receives the direction on 5th of April 25, 5th April 25 say time limit starts, and the maximum time which a special auditor get is 180 days. From that day, usko unhone change kar diya. Now they say shall not in any case exceed 6 months from the end of the month in which directions are received. तो ये सिंप्लीफिकेशन हुआ है. अगर मैं 5 अप्रैल से 180 दिन गिनूंगा, कंसीडरिंग सम मंथ्स आर 31, सम मंथ्स आर 30, you will have to. But if I want to calculate 6 months from the end of the month, it is easy. So there is some simplification here. But the scope of litigation goes, because wherever they have simplified, your litigation has reduced. Accountant was earlier defined in section 142(2)(a). As accountant is defined in explanation below section 282. Now there is no such explanation in section 268. However, accountant has been defined in section 5153(b), which includes a chartered accountant as well. So these are the 2 changes which have come forward. Some of the things to highlight in section 142 is they can ask you to, under 142(1), they can issue you a notice to file a return of income if you have not already filed a return of income. And that can be done if no return has been filed before the end of the succeeding year. That is end of the assessment year. Now this section naturally has not taken into account the time limit to file your updated returns. Hardly I have seen nowadays an officer issuing you 142(1) notice to file return of income. But if you get a 142(1) notice to file a return, that's the best opportunity to grab, because otherwise if you go under updated return, you will have to pay more taxes. So 142(1), file return, normal provisions, normal tax rate. It's not an updated return. Now 142(1) may they can ask you to provide 2 things: A, documents, and B, accounts. Accounts, they can ask you, that is statement of assets and liabilities and accounts only for 3 years preceding the year involved. 8 साल जुना अकाउंट्स नहीं मांग सकते. Plus, if you are not maintaining your statement of assets and liabilities, and if they want you to furnish a statement of assets and liabilities, that detail can be asked for by the assessing officer only with the prior approval of joint commissioner. ये अप्रूवल शब्द पे आप प्लीज बहुत ध्यान दो, क्योंकि ये लिटिगेशन में अप्रूवल शब्द पे बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं. To give a simple example, if you are searched, then there is a 153A assessment earlier. A 153A order for 6 years preceding the year of search has to be passed with the prior approval of a joint commissioner under 153D. If the approval writes, I am satisfied, courts have held such approval to be a mechanical one. Entire 6 years ka order has been quashed and set aside. If the approval is given on the same day for various assessees, courts have held it is impossible for a joint commissioner to go through so many records, and therefore the approval is mechanical, and therefore all 6 years quashed. If the AO only forwards a draft assessment order for his approval, there is no proof on record to show that he had called for the assessment records. Courts have quashed all orders. And lastly, if the approval is manual after 1st of December 2019 without any document identification number, क्या होता है ये चीज? Dil. Approval is bad enough. जहां जहां पे भी अप्रूवल शब्द इनकम टैक्स एक्ट 1961 या 2025 में यूज हुआ है, इट इज फॉर योर बेनिफिट. व्हाट यू हैव टू डू इज समथिंग इफ डन with the prior approval, your first step should be please provide us a copy of approval. अच्छा, तुरंत मत मांग लेगा, कर देंगे बैक डेटेड 6-7 महीने के बाद कर देंगे. बैक डेटेड का भी तोड़ है डील. Some amendment in the Income Tax Act 292BC, something is there to nullify that DIN effect, and they have now come out with a new circular that internal communications between the department cannot be subject matter of DIN. But the circular is with effect from 1st of April 2026 or whatever that date of circular is. उसके पहले वाले सर्कुलर में बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट has consistently taken a view, Exaware, Ashok Commercial, Sanjay Nathalal Shah, to the effect that approval or any internal communication should also bear a DIN. Not there, it is bad in law. So your approval शब्द को बहुत lightly मत लो. It's an important weapon for an assessee to challenge the actions. Now, a special audit is something very few people face that, but of course, whenever you face that, special audit is audit of your accounts already maintained, and not to direct the auditor. You prepare accounts based on the material file. There's a difference. Audit मतलब जो है उसको audit करो, उसके basis पे books मत बनाओ. That's not the purpose. So we have seen many a times the assessing officer giving directions to the special auditor that prepare accounts. There are decisions to the effect it's not permissible. Next section is section 142A, corresponding section 269. 142A is a section which enables income tax officer to call for a valuation report. Wherever you have furnished a valuation report, AO is not happy. Wherever he is not happy with the valuation, he can ask the department's valuer to get it valued. Now, what are the changes? 142A, power of a valuer, they made a reference to section 38A of Wealth Tax Act. Wealth Tax Act को जाके भी 11 साल हो गए. And therefore, all those powers have now been incorporated in the Income Tax Act 2025. 2, a valuer also have power to rectify his report if there is a mistake apparent from record. And 3, valuation officer का scope बढ़ा के it includes apart from engineer, overseers, surveyors, assessors to assist valuation officer. Of course, it's not always that you value an immovable property. There is a necessity to value shares and securities, plant and machinery, ships, aircrafts, etc. वहां के अलग अलग वैल्यूअर होते हैं, तो उनका भी डेफिनेशन में एक इंक्लूजन कर दिया. The next section is section 143. Let us break it into some parts. 143.1 deals with your summary assessment, your intimation under 143.1. Same चीज continue हुआ है to section 270 subsection 1. Last year they got an amendment in 143.1 as well as in section 271 to the effect that if you're carrying forward some losses, that loss can be carried forward as set off only if that year's return is timed within the due date prescribed. Then only you can set it off. अब सपोज आपका रिटर्न लेट फाइल हुआ है, आपका वो लॉस फिर भी आपने कैरी फॉरवर्ड किया है और 4 साल के बाद सेट ऑफ किया. Now they think they are progressing technologically, so they included one more clause to the effect that we can disallow set off of any loss which you have claimed if in that year your return was not filed in time. Why this was necessary is because the earlier clauses did not give them the requisite power. Earlier clauses क्या था? Arithmetical errors. Incorrect claim apparent from the return of income file. Apparent from the return मतलब इस साल का रिटर्न. और ये जो एडजस्टमेंट है ये इस साल की रिटर्न में नहीं, it is depending upon the past years. That power they did not have. Therefore this amendment. However, when this amendment is made in the new act section 270 में, अब यहां पे they have given reference to year in which return has been filed beyond the due dates prescribed in 263 subsection 1. चौको मत, वो 139 का नया सेक्शन न्यू लॉ. 263 मतलब हमारे दिमाग में तो रिवीजन आता है, प्रिंसिपल कमिश्नर का पावर आगे ले. Point which I am trying to make is, if your return of income was filed late in AY 23-24 and you have claimed a set off in tax year 26-27, he cannot make a disallowance under 143.1 because this only refers to a return of income filed under the new law. There is no reference to transition provisions. ये चीज आपको ध्यान रखना है. और भी एग्जांपल्स है. फॉर एग्जांपल 115 BAA BAB BAC you have to file form 10 IC 10 ID and 10 I. सेक्शन ये बोलता है कि once you opt for this, then you are bound by this. अब ये हो गया ओल्ड एक्ट में. रिपील के बाद क्या? Can I go back to the old system? Because that opting has happened in the earlier years. Yes, no. How many of you say yes, we can do? How many of you say we can't do? कुछ तो ओपिनियन दो यार. हाँ या ना, दोनों में से एक ही आंसर हो सकता है. There can't be any third answer. Because of the repeals and savings provisions, no. Any liabilities incurred? Yes. Any rights shall continue. Thank you. There is, I think, one provision which does not reflect in the repeal provisions. I don't know if somebody has taken that or not. Section 78 and section 79. Change in shareholding. To give an example, your shareholding, if it changes by more than 51%, then under section 79, you can't claim that set off of losses. Correct? So if your shareholding and the losses are prior to tax year 26-27, what you would apply to you is 79. And if you want to set it off after the Income Tax Act 2025, what will apply is a new law. There is an absence of reference to section 78 and 79 in the repeals and savings provision. There is some scope to argue that if there is a change of shareholding prior to 1961, prior to 2025, after 2025, this restriction or bar should not apply. There is a scope to argue. So you will have to please keep in mind, whenever there is a reference to new section, you will also check if there is a reference to the old section or not. And if it's a transitional provisions, no reference to old provision will assist you. Now, who processes your return of income? CPC के पास पावर कहां से आया? बस इंटीमेशन आ गया और अपन ने रेक्टिफाई कर लिया, काम खत्म. Who gave them the power? Who gave them the power to issue intimation under 143? What is the source of power? Under section 143, 1A, 1B, 1C, government was empowered to notify a scheme for centralized processing of your return, under which they have notified a centralized processing of your return of income scheme 2011, which gives CPC the power to process your returns. कभी किसी ने स्कीम देखा है? Just go through the scheme, just compare the powers available with CPC under that scheme and compare that with the powers available to make a intimation under 143(1). Just compare, same है कि अलग-अलग. Now, that scheme is notified under which law? अब 2025 के बाद कौन प्रोसेस करेगा? कैसे वो करेगा? यहाँ पे उनको लाना पड़ेगा एक स्कीम. They have notified under 536(2)(j) that whichever scheme's notification instructions order under the old law, to the extent it is not inconsistent, will also apply here. So that scheme will come here. देखो मेरे बोलने से आपके लाइफ में कुछ बहुत बड़ा चेंज नहीं आने वाला है, तो आप तो फिर भी इंटीमेशन देख के आप प्रोसेस करने वाले हो. But some point of time when you are badly stuck with no argument available, that point of time you have to look into all these things. Now I had argued earlier, 143(1)(a) has AO has power to rectify to adjust your income by A, B, C, D, E, F clause. If you compare that with scheme, there are no such powers. एंड जब ये चेकमेट का कंट्रोवर्सी आया था 3615 है, तब मैंने ये आर्ग्यू किया था कि सीपीसी के पास ये पावर्स है ही नहीं. कोई सुना नहीं वो अलग बात है, बट अटेम्प्ट वाज मेड. इफ समबडी हैड अप्लाइड इट्स माइंड प्रॉपर्ली थरली, बिकॉज चेकमेट में तो क्या है, वो पूरा वो फ्लो में सब ऑर्डर्स पास हो रहा है. बट इफ यू लॉजिकली अप्लाई, देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. So therefore you keep these sources in your mind. ये कहां से आ रहा है? That curiosity should arise. ये कहां से पावर आया? ये सीपीसी क्यों जा रहा है? उसके पास क्या पावर है? Who has rectification power under 154? सीपीसी की एओ. फिर भी सीपीसी 154 करके आपको भेज रहा है. Now how do you say AO has power?
Transfer power to it.
CPC has right to transfer power to it. उसके पास कहां से पावर आया टू ट्रांसफर पावर? भगवान भरोसे चल रहा है सीपीसी. How many times you have received a proposal and you filed a detailed reply? एकदम मेहनत करके आपने रिप्लाई फाइल किया, and what is their reply to your reply? There's one line they write. I don't know if you have read it or not. Either no reply is filed or we are not satisfied with your reply and therefore we make the adjustment. Because वहां पे आदमी नहीं है, कंप्यूटर है. their system is programmed. Classic case 87A rebate. They changed their form, not allowing us to claim rebate, correct? Why? Reason पता है? I was there in the High Court. हमारा petition है ये, Chamber of Tax Consultant का. डिपार्टमेंट बोलता है हमारे से प्रोसेसिंग बरोबर नहीं होगा, इसलिए हमको यहाँ पे इनको अटका दिया. Your processing under 143(1) has a bearing on what claims you make in your return of income. Can that be a ground to deny me a claim? No. That is why the courts intervene. So everything is now system driven. CPC scheme will apply, but I have a doubt. A, why? Under the old section 143(1), CPC के पास the government had the power to notify a scheme, as well as they had a power to notify a scheme which will override, substitute, modify other provisions of the act. क्योंकि they are computerizing, it may not be in sync with other provisions of the act. So therefore an overriding power is given to the government कि आप जब स्कीम नोटिफाई कर रहे हैं, then it is with the effect that कि ये स्कीम आपके other provisions को override करेंगी. That power of overriding is missing in the new act. Yes, sir. हाँ.
Get this powers
हाँ.
of the CPC, not under income tax, but under any other act.
Right.
Be given not under the main act, but under delegated legislation.
So it's given under the main act itself.
But in case if it is not given under the main act,
Then there is a problem.
there is a problem.
100% there is a problem. This is another petition which is pending before the Bombay High Court, filed by Chamber of Tax Consultant, where we had challenged the faceless appeal scheme. Because there are certain provisions of the faceless appeal scheme which had overridden the provisions of the act. The court was shocked to know this fact. Because the department in its reply had stated that personal hearing is not mandatory, personal hearing will be given only if the commissioner appeal. नहीं, उसका boss feels कि इसमें personal hearing is required. Administrative interference in a judicial function is completely prohibited. Because you are hearing an appeal between your own department and the SSC. And the one who is superior to is really and a party before the CIT appeal. So when the court became aware that, sir, you have a right to personal hearing, are they saying this? That this will override that? And when you showed them, yes, they are saying this, court was shocked. So delegated piece of legislation, a complete different controversy, their essential legislative functions can't be delegated. So therefore, my case here is that probably CPC scheme is notified with the intention of overriding other provisions of the act, which powers are not available here, and therefore simply stated that CPC scheme cannot apply here because 536(2)(j) states that only if the powers are consistent. That can be one ground to argue. One more important point which nobody recognizes. पीयूष जी है चले गए, बता देना उनको एक रिप्रेजेंटेशन करने के लिए. If they want to adjust your total income, they'll issue you a proposal. But if they want to adjust your tax liability, they will never issue you a proposal. Because a proposal is prescribed under 143(1)(a) proviso. Computation of tax liability is in 143(1)(b), and computation of tax payable is in 143(1)(c). So whenever you see an intimation where you see TDS credit denied, तुमको proposal नहीं आया है. Only if they are changing your income, proposal आएगा. So जो 2021, 2020 और 21-22 में जो controversy था, Form 10 IC filed late, and therefore they applied instead of 22%, 30%. उसमें आपको proposal नहीं आया था, because that was not changing your income, it was changing your tax liability. However, if because of not giving you 115BAA benefit, they taxed you under 115JB MAT, then there was a change in your total income. उस टाइम पे उनको आपको प्रपोजल देना चाहिए था. अगर प्रपोजल नहीं दिया है, entire thing is bad in law. 144A, an important section which you should use frequently. I don't know, many people don't use it. As
In case of
they will not issue your proposal because that deals with your tax liability and not with your total income.
there whether we can argue that you are putting in some other section which it is not changing.
They're just computing your tax liability. They're just computing. They are not tinkering your total income. Proposal is only if there is a tinkering of your total income, adjusted total income, whatever. Therefore, representation. पीयूष जी को बोल देना. 144A, reference to joint commission in the course of assessment proceeding. In the course of assessment proceeding, if you realize that AO is going here and there, some unusual demands he is likely to create, you have a power to ask the AO, please refer the matter to JCIT, your senior. Nowadays, you must have seen faceless assessment orders. Pura credit side of bank statement is added as your income.
Yes.
You have to write a letter to your AO. First, please refer it to JCIT under 144A. Please refer it to a review unit. It is quite apparent you are not able to understand the matter in it. He has to refer it. And then he will pass an order based upon the directions to be issued by JCIT. Similar powers are there in the new act in the form of section 272. Now, the problem with faceless is that in every faceless assessment, the orders are passed with the prior approval of JCIT. Is what they say. कि सर मैंने अकेले थोड़ी पास किया है, जेसी की अप्रूवल के साथ पास किया है. That is without any requisite provisions in the act or scheme. If I am requesting you to make a reference, you have to make a reference. JCIT. Next notice which I receive, I should receive from JC and not from AO. But अभी फेसलेस में कौन चेक करने जाएगा, कौन नोटिस इशू कर रहा है? मालूम पड़ा ना जेसी कर रहा है ना AO कर रहा है, वो तो उनका इंस्पेक्टर कर रहा है. Faceless assessment 144B was the earlier provisions. Now we are 273. There are two important changes. 144B subsection 1 में सारे steps prescribe किए थे कि पहले ये नोटिस होगा, फिर ये नोटिस होगा, फिर इसका रिप्लाई होगा, फिर शो कॉज आएगा, फिर रिप्लाई होगा, फिर ड्राफ्ट ऑर्डर होगा, एक्सेप्ट. ये सारे स्टेप्स अभी इनकम टैक्स एक्ट सेक्शन 273 से निकाल दिए गए. And now it is by way of a delegated legislation in form of Rule 176. So all those steps you will find in Rule 176. तो नेचुरली इनकम टैक्स एक्ट छोटा ही हो जाएगा अगर आप ये सब चीज यहां से निकाल के रूल में डालोगे. This was their claim that we are reducing the size. क्या किया है तुमने, यहां से निकाल के रूल में डाला. दोनों कंबाइन करके बोलो कितना साइज हुआ है. करेक्ट. ऑल्सो which assessments would be faceless and which would be normal? How do you come to know? How do you come to know which assessment is faceless and which assessment would be a normal jurisdictional? Exception is carved out. Where do you find these exceptions? International tax and central circle, ये exception में आता है. ये कहां से समझा? ये एक्सेप्शन का पावर किसको दिया गया है और ये एक्सेप्शन कहां नोटिफाई किया? Circular notification was under 144B subsection 2. Board will notify which assessments would be conducted under this scheme. पॉजिटिव वर्डिंग्स. कौन सा यहां होगा ये नहीं बताया, कौन सा यहां नहीं होगा. They came out with an order saying sectoral circle, international tax circle और 3-4 और कुछ चीज लिख दिए which will be done in a non-faceless manner. अभी नोटिफिकेशन किस में आया था? ओल्ड एक्ट। अब नए एक्ट में क्या होगा? whether same thing will continue or not? 536 to J. If it is not inconsistent, that will also apply. Correct? Plus, under the old act, they had notified NFAC क्या होता है, assessment units क्या होता है, कौन सी assessment units हैं, those notifications should equally apply here. This big problem. पेनल्टी का आपका लास्ट वीक हो चुका है, केतन भाई ने आपको बताया रहेगा, फ्रॉम 1 April 2027 onwards. Penalty for under-reporting or misreporting would form part of the assessment order itself. Similar to what happens in indirect taxes, वहां पे भी assessment के साथ ही डिमांड के साथ ही पेनल्टी सब जोड़ के ही आ जाता है. This is applicable from 1 April 27 onwards. So all orders passed after 1 April 27 pertaining to whichever year, under the old act or under the new act, they have to include penalty also as a part of the assessment order, but only one penalty, which is under-reporting or misreporting. Correct? Now, I could find a bit dichotomy in the sense that you amended the penalty provisions, but you did not amend the faceless assessment provisions. How? 144B as well as the faceless assessment scheme as notified in Rule 176 issue show cause for any adjustment in total income. B, I file a reply, you pass a draft order, income or loss determination proposal, ऐसा शब्द यूज किया 144B में. Once it is approved, AO shall pass a final order, initiate penalty proceedings. So 144B में तो अभी भी initiation of penalty proceeding ही चल रहा है. So you have not amended 144B. Plus, it is not necessary that the penalty proceedings will go before the same AO, faceless way. It is random allocation system. Now, I don't know how their allocation works, whether it goes before the same AO or not. So, power with a faceless assessing officer at the time of passing order under 144B is to only initiate penalty. We see a likelihood of an amendment after 1 April 27. Because अभी amendment आएगा ना तो वो अभी चालू कर देगा. It's applicable from 1 April 27. So there is a need for an amendment in section 144B as well as rule 176. How does the communication and authentication happen in section 170 is in the faceless scheme is same as rule 176 is prescribed in rule 176. DRP ka directions 144C same as section 275. Only one wordings have been added. Earlier it was what DRP should consider before giving directions. Now they have written DRP to issue directions in writing, stating the point of determination, decision and reasons for such decision. अभी आपके असेसमेंट ऑर्डर में आपने देखा रहेगा कि हर एक असेसमेंट ऑर्डर में नोटिस इज इशूड, रिप्लाई फाइल, वेरिएशंस इफ एनी, शो कॉज इशूड, रिप्लाई फाइल, रिबटल ऑफ द ऐसे एक पैराग्राफ रहता है. So because it is standardized, therefore now that standardization will also happen for DRP is what appears from the new lit. Method of accounting 145 में they have notified under subsection 2 ICDS. कितने ICDS है? How many ICDS? 10. ICDS कौन से लॉ में नोटिफाई किया था? न्यू एक्ट में कैसे होगा? 536(2)J. Same will continue here to the extent not inconsistent. In fact, in the Income Tax Act 2025, जो टैक्समैन का बुक है उसमें नीचे वो फुटनोट में आ गया ICDS has notified there. अब वो टैक्समैन का कमेंट है कि इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट का कमेंट है, वी डोंट नो. You can't believe it to be true. Correct? So we'll have to, probably that old notification will also apply here. Reassessment. So this deals with the assessment part. Now coming to reassessment, again same चीज है, reassessment के provisions भी almost similar है. One point which you should also note in first section 147 proviso and section 279(2). एक ये मेरे reassessment का जब भी lecture होता है तो मैं इसमें ये बताता हूँ. If any income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. This is the first part of section 147. What is escaped assessment? Any income chargeable to tax. Then the AO may assess or reassess such income. अब income के पहले क्या शब्द यूज किया है? Such income. Or disallow any loss or expense or allowance. अब क्या नए 3 शब्द ऐड हो गए? Loss, allowance, expense. First part says if any income has escaped assessment. Second part says assess or reassess such income. Such मतलब पहला वाला. Or loss or disallow or depreciation allowance or loss or expense etc. Loss, expense, allowance ये 3 शब्द फर्स्ट पार्ट में मिसिंग है. Therefore, if they are reopening to disallow an expense, you can't do that. सर लेकिन ये तो पहले वाले सेक्शन में भी सेम शब्द थे prior to 2021 amendment. There under 147 there was an explanation too, which provided that any losses, excess claim of loss, expense etc. is deemed to be income escaping assessment. वो शब्द यहाँ नहीं है. ये लोग का ड्राफ्टिंग होता है. Plus in the proviso, if you reopen on A ground, in the course of reassessment proceeding, you can add A plus B, C, D because of the proviso to 147. So proviso says AO may assess or reassess income in respect of any issue which has escaped assessment and which comes to his notice. Which has escaped assessment ये शब्द को निकाल दिया गया है नए सेक्शन 279 है. Naturally, he will assess only in respect of something which has escaped assessment. But can it be viewed from this perspective that if in the original assessment, AO has allowed a particular expense after verifying it, you can't reopen because it will amount to change of opinion. But you reopen on a B ground. And then at the time of making a reassessment, B तो करो ही लेकिन ये वाला issue भी करो. Though it has not escaped assessment, still you have the power. Courts have taken a view that you cannot make addition in respect of any issue which has been considered in the earlier assessment proceedings. एक बहुत बड़ा अमेंडमेंट ये लोग लेके आया है जो फाइनेंस बिल 26 में नहीं था, जो फाइनेंस एक्ट 26 में आया है. ये क्यों आया है? क्योंकि ये उनको हेक्सावेयर के डिसीजन को डील करना है. हेक्सावेयर notice has to be issued by FAO and not CHAO. I'll give you an example so that you can relate with it. AO issues a notice. You challenge it by way of writ petition before the High Court. High Court allows your writ petition. Notice cost and set aside. Can they continue with the reassessment proceeding? They can't continue because notice has gone. Department goes to Supreme Court. Supreme Court में after 5 years, Supreme Court says no, High Court is not correct. This notice is valid. अब नोटिस जिंदा हो गया. Now can they continue with the reassessment? कर सकते हैं continue? Now what will your argument be? Today it is time barred. Today it is नहीं 149 नहीं 149 is for issuance of 148. 148 तो issue हो चुका है. 148 होने के बाद 153 में time limit to complete the assessment होता है. Sir, it is time barred. No, sir. How could I continue if the Bombay High Court has set aside the notice? तो मैं क्या करूं? Under explanation to 153, you can exclude the period during which there is a stay on the reassessment proceeding. Once it is quashed, there is no stay. You did not secure a stay order from the Supreme Court. To avoid this argument, they have inserted something in section 150 and something in section 148. They say that if Supreme Court issues a direction or if a court issues a direction, then within 3 months from the end of the quarter, we will issue a fresh notice and then the assessment will continue. This, according to me, is the most absurd amendment. It is a case of a legislative misfire. Why? If Supreme Court says High Court is wrong, and therefore we are setting aside the High Court order, उसका अर्थ ये है कि जूना 148 अलाइव हो गया है. There is no need for you to issue a fresh 148 notice. Whereas the power or the amendment which you have not brought out in section 150 is to issue a fresh notice. So what they are trying to do is they will go before the Supreme Court, they will tell the Supreme Court, sir, this judgment is bad in law. High Court has not considered this, reassessment was validated, and Supreme Court says, okay, we agree. But sir, don't quash the High Court order, allow us to issue a fresh 148. The Supreme Court cannot do that. So this is probably to take care of. Abhi now, suppose Supreme Court ने ऐसा directions दे भी दिया. And if they want to issue a 148, the time limit is 3 months from the end of the quarter in which the order is received by. But उसके पहले क्या उनको 148A1 फॉलो करके 148A3 का ऑर्डर पास करना है कि नहीं करना है? Under Income Tax Act 1961, there is no such exception in 148A. उसका मतलब अगर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने वापस भेज भी दिया, फिर भी तुमको 148A1 से A3 करना है. But under the new law, you are not required to do 148A1 से A3. So there is this difference between the old act and the new act. Really, according to me, this amendment does not make any sense at all. But अभी है तो है. Time limits are same 3 year and 5 year, but what they have written is 4 years and 6 years, because 3 years and 5 years are to be computed from the end of the, whereas 4 years and 6 years are to be computed from the end of the, वो same ही होता है. Section 153 deals with the time limits. ये मैंने कुछ एक टेबल बनाया है, time limits कौन से section में क्या है, for completing assessment, set aside, ये वो. They have made some substantial changes. Instead of 12 months, they have said 1 year. Except one change is where he has to pass an order giving effect to the order of the appellate authority without any fresh assessment. Earlier, the time limit was 3 months, which could have been extended to 9 months. Now it is 6 months, which could have been extended to 9 months. And all this is in a table form in the new section 286. Plus, wherever a reference is made to TPO, that point of time, you get an extension. Rectification. ये इंटरेस्टिंग चीज, दो चीज मेरे को मिला रेक्टिफिकेशन का पावर्स जब मैं कंपेयर कर रहा हूं 154 विद 287 and 155 with 288. Under 154, the assessing officer has a power to rectify A, orders, and B, intimation. Is intimation not an order? ऑर्डर है कि नहीं इंटीमेशन? अगर वो ऑर्डर है तो उसका 263 भी हो सकता है, इसलिए ध्यान से बोलना। 143(1) इंटीमेशन इज स्क्रूटिनी अपना समरी असेसमेंट, सीपीसी वाला कंप्यूटर। इज इट एन ऑर्डर, इज इट एन इंटीमेशन? इज इट एन ऑर्डर? प्रोविजनल वर्ड शब्द यूज मत करो, प्रोविजनल इज समथिंग डिफरेंट। It's not an order because you can file an appeal. 246A में specifically power दिया गया, अगर instance intimation you can file an appeal. Intimation is different, it's not an order in normal parlance. अगर वो order ही होता तो यहाँ पे अलग से intimation लिखने का अर्थ नहीं बनता था, order में ही वो cover होता था. Now, AO passes an assessment order. 3 issues raised. I am in appeal before CIT appeal on 3 issues raised. Appellate authority passes an order dismissing my appeal. But in respect of one of the issues, I also file a 154. Can the AO rectify on that issue, which is subject matter of appeal? Can he do that? He cannot do if the CIT appeal has already passed the order. This is 154 subsection 2, called doctrine of merger. Order of a lower authority has merged with the higher authority, and therefore now the lower authority cannot poke his nose. इस सेक्शन में उन्होंने सिर्फ ऑर्डर शब्द यूज किया है, इंटीमेशन शब्द यूज नहीं किया है। 154(2) में ये इनको रियलाइज हुआ, इसलिए 287(2) में ऑर्डर और इंटीमेशन दोनों शब्द यूज किए। इसका अर्थ ये होता है कि in the old act, in respect of an intimation, though CIT appeal has passed an order, still AO can rectify it. Because the word intimation is not present in 154(2), and when you compare it with the 287(2), intimation word is present. Therefore, this can still happen. Who can amend? An income tax authority can amend any order passed by it. It मतलब उसने जो खुद ने किया ना वो खुद अमेंड कर सकता है. But this provision is not applicable when you come to faceless assessment. Faceless order पास करेगा, उसके बाद rectification कौन पास करता है? जाओ करता है. Why? Because faceless scheme में लिखा हुआ है it shall override other provisions of this act. But I had taken this argument. 263. What is 263? Old Act. Revision by Commissioner. What can he revise? Order passed by authority, lower to him. So I have a question. Can PCIT 2 issue and pass an order under 263 in respect of an order passed by an officer who is under the charge of PCIT 1? समझा ना? ठीक नहीं, वो तो हमको भी पता है, बट कर सकते हैं कि नहीं? It has to be under his jurisdiction, which means the officer whose order he wants to revise should be subordinate to, because it's a supervisory power.
Yes.
Correct? Anything wrong? How does the faceless assessing officer ka revision is done by your jurisdictional commissioner? कैसे होता है? There is a power. And I am not making section 263 redundant. Why? Because हर एक फेसलेस यूनिट में एक प्रिंसिपल कमिश्नर बैठा हुआ है. सो अगर फेसलेस कैलकाटा यूनिट ने एक असेसमेंट ऑर्डर पास किया, आई डोंट नो कैलकाटा कौन है, बट उसका सुपीरियर एक पीसीआईटी कैलकुलेटर रहेगा, उसको वो रिवाइज कर। ये आर्गुमेंट मैंने लिया था, लेकिन ये आर्गुमेंट हाईकोर्ट ने ट्रिब्यूनल ने रिजेक्ट किया, because then they realized, oh, this is something massive. All 263 orders failed. So they gave me relief on merits. This issue they decided against. Worth challenging. When you come out with a law, you have to make it in sync with the other acts, other provisions of the act. So when you come out with 144B like a scheme faceless AO, see to it other provisions of the act are in sync with it. अगर नहीं है तो तुम्हारा गलती है. Because if a commissioner has no jurisdiction, he has no jurisdiction. Some minor changes in 155. 155, everybody knows 155. 155 is in the case of 154, a rectification can happen within 4 years from the date of the order. 155, in some of the cases, there is a possibility that you want to rectify something to give effect to somebody else's order, etc., which is beyond 4 years. So there, the 4-year period has to be counted from the date of receipt of such kind of order or such kind of new event. That is 155. तो उसमें कुछ minor changes कर दिया है. But nothing as substantial. I have just pointed it out, but not worth discussing. Penalty, I think, is done. But very briefly, 3 changes made. Instead of all penalty provisions, may direct that such person shall pay by way of penalty. इसको replace कर दिया है by the word may impose a penalty. So 8 शब्द को 3 शब्द में लेके आया. That is how they justify कि हमने simplify किया. Many penalty provisions uses the word without prejudice to section so and so, so and so, so and so. ये without prejudice वाला चीज नए एक्ट में नहीं है. And therefore, your argument that there can't be 2 penalty for the same offenses will arise. And search related जितने भी penalty provisions से 271 A, B, A, C, A, D, etc. जो भी था, वो सब निकाल दिया है, because search का अलग से block assessment होता है, वहां पर penalty होता है. Ethan Bhai must have covered. If I am skipping this. Just that, let me just touch upon the new provisions of passing this penalty order as a part of the draft order. It will apply to 1st April 2027 onwards in respect of AY 26-27 or prior years. आपको पता है कि if the penalty is more than 10,000, then before passing any penalty order, approval of joint commissioner is necessary. तो जो भी मैंने पहले अप्रूवल के बारे में कहा था, वो सब चीज यहाँ पे भी अप्लाई होता है. Please apply for the copy of the approval. 4-5 questions which may arise is, section 274 has been amended that before passing any penalty order, show cause is mandatory. पहले शब्द था has to give an opportunity of being heard. Now they have said by way of a show cause notice. Now show cause is mandatory. इसका डिफरेंस नहीं समझा. इसका डिफरेंस ये है, 263 प्रोसीडिंग्स में बिफोर पासिंग एनी रिवीजन ऑर्डर द वर्डिंग्स आर ही शैल गिव एन अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ बीइंग हर्ड. वहां शो कॉज शब्द या वहां नोटिस शब्द यूज नहीं हुआ है. सो इन केस ऑफ अमिताभ बच्चन, when the matter went to Supreme Court says कि शो कॉज ए पे इशू हुआ है, तुमने ए बी सी किया है, बी सी का तो शो कॉज ही नहीं है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला कि बीसी का नोटिस नहीं आया, लेकिन सेक्शन में शो कॉज का रिक्वायरमेंट कहाँ है? सेक्शन में रिक्वायरमेंट है कि तुमने इस इशू पे अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ बीइंग हर्ड दिया है कि नहीं. करेक्ट? सेम वर्डिंग्स वर देयर इन 274. Despite that, we got many decisions, not only from the tribunals but also from the high courts, and SLP dismissed that if the show cause में concealment या inaccurate में से कुछ strike off नहीं किया, the notice is bad in law, penalty is bad in law. Now nobody has cited Amitabh Bachchan in those cases. अगर अमिताभ बच्चन वहां साइट हो गया तो सारा जजमेंट रिवर्स हो जाएगा. Now it cannot be cited because now the section says a show cause has to be issued. That is the difference. The logic is charge has to be made clear. Okay. अब separate show cause होगा कि it is the part of the same show cause? That is the first question. A penalty if it is more than 10,000 you need a prior approval of joint commissioner. But if penalty is part of the assessment order, then for that matter, even the assessment order now needs to have a prior approval of joint commission. Because if it's part of the same order, तो तुमको ये देखना है कि भाई पहले addition बरोबर है कि नहीं, फिर penalty बरोबर है. पहले जब वो अलग अलग होता था तो joint commissioner को सिर्फ इतना देखना था कि once addition has been made rightly or wrongly, penalty should be levied or not. Now his role is more. 3. Section 274 and for that matter 471 uses the word draft order and order of assessment under 143 or 147 or the corresponding. They have not referred to final order in a 144C DRP case. Of course, somebody will say, sir, वो assessment और वो reassessment में आएगा ना. Department's argument before the Supreme Court and Bombay High Court is कि 144C is a separate code. There the order is not passed under 143, it is passed under 144C and therefore time limit of 153 will not apply. बहुत बड़ा कंट्रोवर्सी चल रहा है. इतना बड़ा कंट्रोवर्सी है कि दो हाई कोर्ट फेवर में और सुप्रीम कोर्ट के एक जज ने भी ये व्यू लिया. देयर इज अ स्प्लिट व्यू टू द इफेक्ट दैट डीआरपी के जो 9 महीने होते हैं ना, दैट्स पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ अ 21 months assessment period. And if this view is taken, please take it from me. 2009 जब से डीआरपी आया तब से लेके आज तक डिपार्टमेंट ने एक भी ऑर्डर टाइम से पास नहीं किया. That massive impact. Now, of course, they got some retrospective amendment. But there their argument is that draft order is separate and final order is separate and everything comes under the 144C code. So your final assessment order is missing. What about a set-aside proceedings? Set-aside proceeding में क्या होगा? Because once assessment is set aside, naturally penalty is set aside. So assessment order passed prior to say 1st April 27 goes to tribunal, CIT appeal. CIT appeal ने वापस रिमांड कर दिया. उसके बाद क्या होगा? उस केस में भी उनको सीए नया प्रोसीजर फॉलो करना है कि नहीं? Suppose AO forgets. He does not make penalty as a part of the order. Can he pass a separate order? Because time limit under 275 has not been changed. उसमें अभी भी लिखा है 3 months or 6 months from the end of the year in which the order is passed or CIT bill order is passed or tribunal order is passed. उसमें अभी भी वही चीज लिखा है. Answer is he cannot pass a separate order. If he forgets, he forgets. Some of the ifs and buts we'll have to wait for one more year to find out कि और कुछ amendment आ रहा है कि नहीं. Prosecution. This year the government had a change of heart. Rigorous imprisonment को लोगों ने single imprisonment convert कर दिया. They realized कि ना इससे किसी को डर लग रहा है, किसको जो करना है वो तो कर ही रहा है, ऊपर से हम जो प्रोसिक्यूशन का टारगेट दे रहे हैं उसके कारण हमारा खर्चा बढ़ रहा है. और एसएससी तो पहले थोड़े डरे हुए थे, कंपाउंडिंग कर रहे थे, अब तो लोग कंपाउंडिंग भी नहीं कर रहे. फिर देखा जाएगा जो होगा वो. So for them it has now turned to be a costly procedure. So all cases where tax evasion is less than 10 lakhs, TDS, TCS, income tax, evasion, underreporting, misreporting, whatever, not filed return of income, you will be only saddled with fine. 10 lakhs to 50 lakhs, simple imprisonment of 2 years, 6 months, or fine, or both. And if it is above 50 lakhs, then 2 years or fine or both. And second and subsequent offenses will be maximum 3 years. Correct? This one big change has happened which has little bit bothered me. Mostly pertains to your digital evidences, WhatsApp chat and Excel sheet and all. काफी लोगों ने ऑन मनी का केसेस सब हैंडल किया रहेगा कि बिल्डर के यहाँ पे एक्सेल शीट आया है, व्हाट्सएप चैट मिला, ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ विच योर असेसमेंट हैज बीन रीओपन्ड एक्सेट्रा. नाउ under 132 4C there is a presumption that if something has been found from some person's premises, it is in his handwriting and it is deemed to be true. Same presumption also applies for the purpose of prosecution. ये तब तक ठीक था जब तक ये डिजिटल एविडेंस को टच नहीं करता था. Now presumption has exceeded or included even virtual digital asset, any information in electronic form or on computer system or computer system. This is problem. Because if you have taken something from somebody's computer system, under the Indian Evidence Act section 65B, you were supposed to get a certificate before using that, because that is a secondary piece of evidence. तो हमको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा कि ये एक्सेल शीट उसके कंप्यूटर से आया कि ये असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने खुद बनाया? ये हमको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा कि ये जो एक्सेल शीट जो तुम हमको दे रहे हो वो एज इट इज तुमको वहां से मिला था, इसमें कुछ डिलीशन एडिशन नहीं हुआ है? It is for that you need a section 65B certificate. In fact, department's manual of 2014 also suggests that you have to get a certificate. There's a Supreme Court decision in case of Arjun Khotkar, which has again reaffirmed this principle, not in the context of Income Tax Act, but some other law. In the context of Income Tax Act, there were divergent views. Some courts taking that you need a certificate, you don't need a certificate. Be that as it may, for the purpose of making an assessment, for the purpose of making an addition, okay. But when it comes to prosecution, there can't be this kind of presumption. Because then it becomes a criminal offense. Therefore, when you come to prosecution, there cannot be a presumption that this is found to be true. It has to be something more in case of a digital evidence. Appeals. Some छोटे-मोटे changes किए हैं. If you go to CIT appeal, if your appeal is delayed, then they can condone the delay for any good or sufficient reason. Wordings are good or sufficient reason. अब उन्होंने good or sufficient word को निकाल दिया for reasons. Yeah. Of course, there is a power to set aside case. CIT appeal does not have the power to set aside, but now they also have a power to set aside in a best judgment assessment case. Revision. Apart from this, there is no great change in the appeal provisions. Same चीज continue हो रहा है. Revision 263, 264. If there is stay on a 263 show cause, then the period of stay gets excluded. After exclusion of this period of stay, if the commissioner gets less than 60 days, then it would not get extended to 60 days. 153 में ये explanation में है. If there is a stay assessment proceeding, that period gets excluded. And after the expiry of stay, if it is less than 60 days, it gets extended to 60 days. Commissioner के revision के power में, it was only the period of exclusion was the period of stay. In the new act, now they have amended that if it is less than 60 days, the commissioner will get 60 days time. एक question है. Commissioner passes an order under 263 without following the principles of natural justice. You file an appeal before the tribunal. Tribunal says, yes, there is a violation of principles of natural justice, which is mandatory. And therefore, I remand the matter back to Commissioner 263. और a different case लेते हैं. 143(1) का intimation होता है. उसमें काफी सारे absurd adjustments कर देते हैं, and then you have to clarify your position before CIT appeal, and then you have to clarify your position before tribunal. And tribunal many a time passes this order that let it go back to AO to verify. Now, after you remand back, there is a time available to continue with 263 or 143 proceedings. So my question is, will it serve any purpose if you remand cases under 143(1) or 263? 143(3) अगर रिमांड हो रहा है तो 153 में स्पेसिफिक टाइम लिमिट है, सेट असाइड असेसमेंट फॉर मेकिंग फ्रेश असेसमेंट 12 months. Where is that specific time limit for a 263 set aside case or for a 143(1) assessment? अगर रिमांड बैक हुआ, first argument you should take is it's time barred, drop it. In fact, there's a Delhi High Court decision where department says, okay, send it back. Delhi High Court says, today it is time barred, I can't even send it back. Therefore, cost. Under the faceless scheme 536(2)J, 532 is a power, general power. अब तक क्या था कि 144 में, 92 में, 154 में, 140, 151A में, 264A में, सब जगह पावर देके रखा था to the government to come out with the faceless scheme. Now they have consolidated that everything in 532. And also to come out with scheme, there is no time limit prescribed. So they can come out with scheme at any point of time. 4 साल के बाद भी आ सकते हैं. But all old notifications will continue. So faceless penalty scheme will continue. Faceless collection of information scheme under 135A will continue. All those schemes which are not inconsistent will continue under the new act. So I think these are some of the changes, nothing much substantial. These are some of the changes. And this is a charter. I think hope charter also continues under the new law. ये old act में लेके आए थे, but all rights and privileges also continue. So therefore this also continues. Thank you so much for a patient hearing. And if there are any questions, I am ready to look the first.
Thank you. I must say, wonderful. I mean, what a complex topic, and he has broken the words, sections in such a nice and music way. The complex topic is broken so nicely. I'm really hats off to him. So that is the reason I had to put a lot of words to invite him. He is so busy, he is a very difficult to reach him out. So I will to approach PUC to approach him. So thankfully he agrees for the session, and
Check has been put.
so it was a really wonderful, thoroughly here. I invite our deputy for give a formal vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, friends. Thank you, Lalitji, for giving me the opportunity to give the heartily vote of thanks. On behalf of JB Nagar Study Circle, I, Bijal Modi, give a heartily vote of thanks to CA Dharan Gandhiji for enlightening us on the important and the practical-oriented topic. Sir, your area of the assessment, appellant proceeding, penalties, and prosecution demand not only technical expert but also the professional wisdom, strategic thinking, and the eligible crediting. Your thorough knowledge and the deep insight on the practical illustration given by you was the real life opportunity. You have simplified the complex litigation provisions and how we can approach a new income tax regime with the confidence and preparedness. Your session was inspired us to strengthen our professional and knowledge in the action. As in Sanskrit it is said that Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. A sincere seeker of the knowledge ultimately gains the wisdom. Sir, today your session was enriched with the spirit of learning among all of us. On so behalf of the JB Nagar and for all the participants, I request all of you to give the heartily vote of thanks to CA Dharan Gandhi. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session. Thank you.